James is going to join us whenever he wants to, and he wants to join us now. And we're talking Kings basketball. We're thrilled. Let's bring you into the question that we posted. James 1320 Kings insider James Ham with us. We asked, who is the most irreplaceable player on the Sacramento Kings?
Man, that's tough. I'm going to say Harrison Barnes, but
35% of the votes say Harrison Barnes, 32% say DeAaron. That's over on YouTube right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that means that. I mean, Harrison Barnes has been their best player so far, but I think we all know that DeAaron Fox can be their best player, but that doesn't mean that he's not. If you look at their roster construction, there's no one who does what Harrison does. So, he's one of the few players they have on the team that can do like back to the basket, go down low and score.
Yeah.
And then you look at his versatility to play the 3 and the 4. He can start at either position. He can shoot the 3 ball. Yeah, I mean, he's been incredible and totally irreplaceable in my book.
So, James, I don't disagree with anything that you say. I said DeAaron Fox, but I understand the argument for Harrison Barnes for sure. Is what I'm about to say and irreplaceable, two different things. So what I'm going to say is we've heard numerous times, at the end of the day, it seems only going to go as far as DeAaron Fox takes him. Is that two different things as opposed to irreplaceable and maybe their most important player or something like that?
Yeah, I think they are totally two different things. I mean, we talked about this quite a few times that like finding a player like Harrison, who's like a 16, 17 PER guy, like player efficiency rating, but he can sustain that for 35 minutes a night. It's not like common in the league. That's a rarity nowadays. I mean, it used to be that, Latrell Sprewell played like 42 minutes a night and every other star level player played like 38, 39, 40 minutes a night. That's just not the league anymore. They've gone away from the heavy loads. And I think that's because the science has gotten a little bit better. They still don't really know like what causes injuries, what doesn't. And I can tell you there were players in the 70s, 80s, 90s that just never missed games for their entire careers. But when it comes to like finding a player like Harrison Barnes, the reason why they did not trade him last year, because, again, like Boston Celtics, there are a bunch of teams that came out after Harrison really hard, was I had a conversation with Monte McNair. He's like, if I trade him, like, what does my team look like next year? What does my team look like the year after that? Like, I think at this point, we're probably looking at how do you extend Harrison Barnes more than you are like, well, what's his value? Because his value is extremely high right now. There would be 15 teams in the league that would be, all right, let me see how I can get him on my roster if you put him on the open market.
Yeah.
I did appreciate your latest episode of the Kings Beat podcast with Sean Cunningham, where you guys were engaged in a conversation. You were well into the podcast before you go, let's show some love to Harrison Barnes, because that's kind of the way this goes. Is we talk about all of the good, we talk about all of the bad, we talk about all of the surprise, we talk about this and that. And then, oh, by the way, he scored 28 tonight. Let's give some love to Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, that's every single show you feel like that, though. I mean, he's just so good. And even like, I think I read the quote that he had, and I don't, well, maybe I do have it in front of me, but his quote was, we can be a good team. The difference for us being a good team and being a non-playoff team is our consistency. And, it's such a simple statement, but it speaks volumes to this team. I mean, on Friday night, they shoot the lights out. They shoot like 55%. They shoot 50 from 3, including franchise record 22 3-pointers. 2 days later, they shoot 37% from the field. They cannot hit a shot at all. And then you get to Monday, and it's like a microcosm of everything, right? They have a great first half. One of the worst. Their third quarter looked exactly like the game that they played the day before, and then their fourth quarter looked exactly like the game they played on Friday. I mean, the inconsistency is not just one game to the next. It's one quarter to the next, one half to the next. And it's something that they have to figure out if they have aspirations. But even saying that, they barely lost every game, that they did lose. I mean, you're seeing some very, very close losses, even though you scored 11 points or 12 points in the third quarter. So I think there is, like, the one thing that is consistent is that they try hard. They are like a gritty, like, try hard team. It's just right now they're living and dying on whether shots go in the basket or they don't. And that's just not the way that you win, 50 games. That's not the way you win. There has to be more to your game when shots don't fall.
Yeah. What's going on with this starting unit, man? Because it hasn't been all the games, but there's been quite a few games, more than I would like, where they dig themselves a hole. They're down 9 points, 12 points, 15 points in Dallas, things of that nature. And it seems to be a pattern so far at 12 games into the season. What do you think the issue is with that and why they get off to these slow starts sometimes?
I'm not sure, like, again, if you look at the third quarter of the Suns game, like, how do you come out so flat? How do you come out? And it wasn't just that they didn't look like they had energy. They just gave the ball away. I mean, they gave the ball away 10 times between Harrison Barnes and DeAaron Fox. I think it was like 6 or 7 times, just those two. Guys were running into each other. It was like such a lack of focus coming out of half. And then it snowballed so quickly. And it was like, wow, well, there goes this game. And it felt like a blowout. And, again, whatever happened in the fourth quarter, I almost, just throw out the window. Like, it is what it is. I mean, you were going to lose that game midway through the third. You knew you were losing that game. It didn't matter what was going to happen in the fourth, even the power comeback. They've got to figure that out, though. Like, whether it's the way that they break a huddle or it's the way that, that they prep for a game, I'm not sure what it is. But we've also seen different versions of that starting lineup. So the one that laid an egg in the third quarter against Phoenix, Tyrese Halliburton wasn't in that lineup, but he's been in parts of lineups that have done the same thing. So I think there are certain guys that are still searching to figure out who and what they are. Teams make adjustments. They have played some really good teams, some really long teams, some physical teams. And, sometimes there was something else that Harrison said. He said, like, we keep getting punched early by teams and we're not the one that punches. And when that happens, you let the opposition get confidence. And once a team has confidence, it's really hard to beat them. So you let guys get loose and it's really, really hard to beat them. Sort of the self-fulfilling, prophecy thing, Jimmer Fredette was a bad defender, but he was like one of the worst defenders ever at the NBA level. And I don't think it was because he was always out of position. It was that every player that came in knew that they were going to eat that night and they came out firing. And so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy because every guy came in and they did do it. And there was nothing Jimmer could do about it. But the confidence level that players came in against him just gave him no shot.
You're listening to D'Lo and KC and 1320 Kings insider James Ham here on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lashers Elk Grove Dodge. You're going to be heading out in about 50 minutes or so to take part in the Luke Walton press conference, and I'm guessing that's when we'll find this out, but I'll go ahead and take a shot at it. Any update on Tyrese Halliburton?
Yeah, I've checked in all day, and they've got nothing for us yet. And, the injury report is different this year. It used to be that we only got updates at, like, I think it was 10:30, like 1:30 and 5:30. And now we get them every hour. So, like, you're kind of strapped to your computer to check. But I've checked in with the Kings and I've checked in with the NBA's injury report. I think he's going to be a game time decision. The same thing with Terence Davis. He rolled his ankle in that game on Monday. So he's hurting a little bit. I would expect one of them will play. But with a back injury, you just don't know. And the Kings are going to be slightly cautious because it's not just a back injury, it's back injury that, it didn't, then they had to hop on a plane and you don't know what it's going to look, if he's going to swell up, if he's going to have issues when he gets to San Antonio. So we'll probably know when Luke comes on at the 4:00 hour, but probably not before that.
And I'll ask you another question that you may not have the answer to just yet, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do we know the severity early on of Terence Davis's. It was just an ankle, right? Because I was at the game on Monday, and I was worried it was a little more than that initially, but I saw some video replays. It looked like it was just an ankle. I know he was questionable coming into this morning, but any update on him?
Yeah, they're listing it as a sore ankle. They're not listing it as an ankle sprain. So I think he just got a little tweak. There's the 3 grades of ankle sprain, which, like we have to go through is part of the job is to go through and read WebMD and figure out
get a kinesiology degree.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So DeAaron Fox, 2 years ago, had a grade 3, which is a complete detachment of the ligament, a complete sever of the ligament. And so that usually takes 2 to 3 months to heal up. He healed up much, much faster than that, which could have been that they misdiagnosed, that there was partially something was still hanging on and then grew back together faster. But with Terence, it looked like just a mild roll. He did go right to the locker room, but he went off on his own power and he went off pretty quickly to the locker room. So I think if it were a different game, it's possible he could have been taped up and come back in, but we'll have to see how he feels.
How glaring for you was Tyreke's absence on Monday?
It's a good question. I mean, I think in the first half, it really wasn't glaring. I thought that was a knockdown, drag out game. I think the Kings would have had their assist numbers, everything was going so well in the first half. And then, basically the breaks, somebody pulled the e-brake on him in the middle of, to start the third, and it just looked horrible. Now, Halliburton could have been someone who came in or could have been someone who started that quarter and had it go a different way. But I don't really know that we know. I think his passing ability is huge. His ability to create for others, create for himself is huge. He really has been playing extremely well. He's been getting a bunch of steals. He's kind of like your secondary assist guy. But I think it also allowed DeAaron Fox a little bit more time to take over and run the show. And I think that was a good thing. I even think, people will disagree with me here, but midway through the fourth, when Luke put Harrison Barnes and DeAaron Fox back in the game, I thought to myself, I'm glad. DeAaron Harrison had a few games where he didn't look fully himself, and his shooting numbers, as far as his volume of shots, has been way down. And then of course Fox has had his struggles. I wanted to see them get out there and just run. Just go out there and forget about everything else and just remember that you're playing the game of basketball, and go have a good time and go try to put up some points. And next thing you know, they climbed right back in that game. But I thought it was a really good thing to see that happen, and to see them have some success and make a game out of it. And then of course, those guys are some of the reasons why you lose in the end with Fox. And I think, Harrison did miss. Harrison had the charge call, which was probably the biggest play of the game, because it would have cut the lead to nothing. And Harrison, he would have gone to the line for an and one. And then Fox missed the 2 free throws. Fox misses Chimezie Metu on that last second play, which was run for Chimezie Metu to be wide open for a lob. And Fox just missed it. And that's possible that he was watching to see if Buddy or Harrison were going to break loose. And then by the time he got it to Chimezie had already come away from the basket and it was too late. So just the little things that they're missing here. Again, it was, I think Harrison and DeAaron, for as good as they were to help get the team back in the game, they were also part of the reason why they lost again.
James, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm interested to get your thoughts, and you might disagree, but I've seen, this whole thing working with DeAaron Fox, or trying to work with him, and a lot of people, saying, this is good, and you can get off the ball. And he mentioned, I can get off the ball, and some of these guys can bring the ball up. I was infuriated in the third quarter when things were just going to hell in a handbasket, and DeAaron just very passively would give the ball to Davion Mitchell, let him bring it up, and DeAaron would go run into this corner. And you contrast that with what he looked like in the fourth quarter when he had the ball in his hands and he was the one pushing and initiating the offense. I'm convinced DeAaron Fox to be anything close to what we think he could be or what we expect him to be, he needs the ball in his hands. I'm ready to get rid of the experiment of other people bringing it up and doing all this other stuff. De'Aaron Fox, when he's out there, he needs to be the main facilitator and initiator of the offense. And to that point, I trust the ability and the IQ of somebody like Tyrese Halliburton to be able to continue to be effective off the ball and still find ways to be effective more than I trust maybe De'Aaron Fox's ability to be effective off the ball. What do you say about that when I say it's maybe time to scrap the whole let other people bring the ball up, keep the ball in De'Aaron's hands as much as possible?
Well, I've said this from the opening of the season. I don't want to see a moment of the game where either De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton, where both of them are out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
There should, in my opinion, those two, one of them has to be on the court for the entire 48 minutes. Like, I don't want to see a moment where Buddy Hield is your primary ball handler or where Davion is your primary ball handler. I mean, maybe 2 years from now, maybe next year, like I can see Davion taking some of that load. But I still think that number one, he's a really good off the ball scorer. Davion is. He's a guy who, played in an offense with basically 3 point guards at Baylor. And I think Ty also had to share point guard duties in the last couple of years, when he was at Iowa State.
He was with THT, wasn't he? Didn't they play together?
Yes. Yeah. So, another ball dominant player.
Right.
So I think that for me, De'Aaron is still trying to adjust to being a secondary, guy in some of those playing off the ball. I think he can do it, but I want to see more and more like what you're saying of De'Aaron Fox just taking over and being the guy. I don't think it always works so, just because Fox isn't a natural pick and roll guy. He's a decent pick and roll point guard, but he's not like a spectacular pick and roll point guard. So, but basically by saying, hey, De'Aaron's only going to be the guy, then you're kind of taking Rashawn Holmes out of the game. And so that's one concern. I love Tyrese Halliburton playing off the ball because I think he's a much better catch and shoot 3-point shooter than he is a guy off the dribble. So like, I think there's still some adjustments that have to happen here, but we're still looking at like how many different like types of 3 guard sets are there? How many, like, who's going to play the 4 in this lineup? And like, I think Walton is still trying to figure out how all of the pieces fit together. And, that makes sense because we're 11 games into a season. But at a certain point, I also like when Walton goes, okay, look, we're going 8 men, maybe even 7 tonight, and we're going to strip this thing down. We're going to go for the win. Like, there's not going to be like time on the court where we're all trying to meld together. This is go time. I got to get off to a good start on a 4-game road trip. I cannot fool around with lineups. I need to go for the win tonight to set this thing up the right way. And so I think it's a balancing thing that he's trying to do. And you just don't know, again, how you're talking about a team who made 22 3-pointers one night and shot 37% from the floor the next night. A team that one night out rebounds their opponent, another night loses by 20, loses a rebound battle by 20. There is no consistency with almost anything we're seeing, except for, I think, effort.
Why is the consistency so lost? Is that just a product of the team? Is it, you mentioned all of the different combinations, the 3-guard combinations. Is it a product of that? Guys are in different roles. Buddy's in a different role. Tyrese is in a different role.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the roles, right? So even if you have, a core guy, a core group of like 5 or 6 players that were here last year, almost all of them are playing different roles. Buddy Hield's coming off the bench. De'Aaron Fox is learning how to play with Tyrese, another true point guard. Even though they played together last year, they had a lot of overlap, and Halliburton always deferred to Fox last season. And so you're just having these different players have different roles. I think Harrison is playing way more 4 than he did in the past years, which means he's got to be a better rebounder. He's got to be a back to the basket guy when things go south, to get that easy basket. So I think that a lot of it is just different roles. And then you're peppering in Davion, you're peppering in Alex Lynn, and Tristan Thompson, and even Mo Harkless, who wasn't there, but like the last 26 games, and a lot of the starters missed the last 10 games of the season. So he had a really small taste with those guys. So I think what we're looking at is the byproduct of some of that. But, at some point, the excuses have to go away and you just have to start playing. And I think this team, again, like the schedule didn't do them any favors. It was brutal to start. The first 8 games were, I think, the most difficult schedule in the league. And now we get to a point where you're looking at 4 road games, and they're road games. It's the NBA. It's tough to go out on the road and win. But the Kings, if they don't win 3 of these 4, it's a disaster, in my opinion. And I think that they should win all 4 if that's who they want to be. If this is sort of a put up or shut up moment. Like, I get it. You just faced, like, people want to scream and yell, but you just faced Indiana, who has an all-star big man and another really good big man and some really nice players all around on a Sunday. And you came back and played the Western Conference champs the next night on the second night of a back-to-back, and you lost. And you lost by a total of what, like 8 points or 7 points between the 2 games. So now it's like, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway, but the way this 4-game road trip plays out, I mean, it's San Antonio, OKC, Detroit, and Minnesota. None of these teams are, I think their combined record is like 10-26. They're not good. And so, and you have breaks between every game. They even have a 2-day break. It's a 4-game, but I think 8 or 9 day road trip, which is just unheard of. And this is where you need to get right.
We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about that schedule with 1320 Kings insider James Ham. We're going to talk more about the game tonight. You've said some things in the past about Buddy Hield and that bench, and I think we might have seen it in action against Phoenix. So we'll dive into that. We're going commercial free to the top of the 4 o'clock hour when we return here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. All right, clear.
The dogs are like, hey. What's going on?
Every day, these poor baby, like they think it's 10 minutes to dinner time or 15 minutes to dinner time. And
damn it, Damien.
Oh, I didn't hear him.
Oh, you didn't see them? No, they're right. They came in and they were right next to me.
Oh, gotcha. The dog started barking as soon as I came on upstairs. So,
I don't think we've heard them.
Yeah,
I'll always assume it's the dog out. There's a dog outside that barks a lot.
I have a golden and I have a pug. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I have 2 yellow labs.
I'm just looking at the the chat, and I'm just gonna
dangerous.
Dangerous.
I know it's danger, Will Robinson. Yeah, I got you. And I want to clarify one thing. The room from Steve Brown. Rumors Vlade didn't interview anyone else before signing Luke. Okay, so you are correct that he did not interview anyone else that time. But when he went to interview before they hired Jaeger, he did I think he had 12 different coaches that he brought in, including 6 of them he brought in for second or third interviews. And before he could make his final decision, Jaeger's people leveraged him out of Memphis, and he was let go on a Friday, was in Sacramento on a Saturday, and signed on the dotted line on Sunday. And none of that had anything to do with Vlade. So sometimes when you know who you want, you just hire him. And so I get it. But, Vlade and Luke had a long-standing relationship. Luke had ties with Steve Kerr. And so that's the Vivek connection there. So maybe you're right. He didn't interview a bunch of coaches, but at the same time, that happens all the time in the league. I mean, didn't Minnesota fire their coach in season and then hire another guy later that night that was outside the organization and give him a 4-year contract? That's not what happened here. And I'll also say this, we started hearing Luke Walton's name around the All-Star break that year with Jaeger still there.
Yep.
I mean, it was a foregone conclusion that
was embarrassing.
Was not going to be back with the Lakers, and that he was probably just jumping into one new job right afterwards.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it became uncomfortably apparent in those final, and I'm not remotely as connected as you are. The final 4 weeks of the season, it became really very obvious Dave was gone.
Oh yeah. No, that was
Dave
a
was
bad
not going to be
situation.
back.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
It's like everyone knows.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, Dave actually had told me that year, before opening night, he said, "What do I got? 20 games?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, like I'm done. I'm cooked." I'm like, "Okay."
That's
He's like,
crazy.
"Yeah." He's like, "I got 20 games," and then at 20 games, I think they're 11-9, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm winning. So what are they gonna do now?" And then the Chris Haynes Yahoo Sports report came out right then. It game 22, 23 when the Kings were winning, and it was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
yeah.
Do you think Yeager gets another job?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's been the lead assistant under Doc Rivers for 2 years. He does have some rehabbing to do of just the basic. You don't want to be a retread, and you want to go out and expand who and what you are. And I'll also say this, like I like Dave. We get along really well. But I get along with just about anybody. And he did not get along with everybody, that's for sure. But I think Dave, I saw him maturing, even though he's I think he's a year older than me. That doesn't mean everyone matures at different ages. I got married, I was 24. So
Hang
I
on,
was married.
James. Sorry,
Yeah.
we're coming back. When I say it's a whole different show on twitch.tv/ESPN1320 and youtube.com/ESPN1320, I mean, it's a whole different show. You get some nuggets over there you might not get on the Odyssey app or 1320 AM,
no matter, you gotta tap in.
No matter where you're listening. We appreciate you listening, but James was holding court there in that last commercial. James started responding to chat messages and opened up with some knowledge there, talking about some previous regimes and some. Is it okay to tease your next podcast?
Oh, yeah.
I talked to James earlier today. I saw the tweet that you got a conversation coming up with Sam Amick of The Athletic, who just talked to Monte McNair on a recent episode, the latest episode of the Tampering podcast over at The Athletic, and you told me it was a little spicy.
Yeah, okay, so first and foremost, Sean Cunningham stuck around. We decided, so I like to do an early morning Tuesday podcast, so usually I record on Monday, and then now I'm going to do a Thursday podcast because I think people get tied up on Fridays and it's just not a good day to do it.
We can confirm.
Yeah. So the problem was that we had back-to-backs, and with Sean's duties, my duties, we couldn't do a podcast on Monday night after the game because that would have been 1 o'clock in the morning. We're sitting around. So we did it on Tuesday, but we both had things going on. We got around noon. I'd already talked to Amick about coming on. And Amick has been on my podcast maybe 15 times over the course of the last decade, at least. I would say at least. And anyway, me and Sean got done, and then Sam hit me up on the same line. So Sean stuck around, and people the media world in Sacramento, we're a very tight group. We all have, we've all been doing this for a long time for the most part. So guys like Sam was a beat writer for the Sacramento Bee. And him and Sean have been friends forever. They both are Elk Grove people. Although Sean doesn't live there anymore. We all have ties, whether it's Marty McNeil, the late great Marty McNeil, or we all worked with Aileen Boyson in the media area for a decade. So to have Sam joined me and Sean, I thought was really cool because Sean is an absolutely spectacular interviewer as well as a very good interviewee. And so I thought it like let us play off each other, and it's really, really brutally honest. We have no reason not to be brutally honest all the time, but sometimes things lead you down a path. Or like I had listened to Amick's podcast with Monte McNair, and I thought it was excellent. It's just that Monte doesn't give you a ton. That's kind of the way he works. But there were little tidbits in that discussion that like set me off. Like that made me think, hey, like we're going to discuss this, and I'm not going to hold back, because I don't get some of the things. Like I get why some of the things were said in there. But when I hear a general manager say that the Marvin Bagley situation is a coaching decision, and that's not going to be that's not the end of the story there. I mean, that's an organizational decision. What's happening with Marvin Bagley? That's not strictly just a coaching decision. Like, oh, he doesn't fit. Like it's all part of a giant package. And if that's true, then if Monte McNair goes and gets blown up by an agent the day before the season, then that's a difficult discussion with Luke. Like, hey, Luke, did you see I just got blown up because of your coaching decision? Right. So that's what I mean. Like, it's not as simple as, oh, that's a coaching decision and this is a general manager decision. So we had some really honest discussions about things like that. About, Vivek, overall.
I Googled the article, by the way.
Oh, did you?
I pulled up the old I remember reading this in real time. James did you did a sit down. This all tie in together after Mike Malone was fired, and there's a reference in here that I was like, oh, okay, that's what James was referring to. This is very interesting.
Alarm bells. So again, when I'm listening to a podcast like that, I'm not like, I get that most people get done with it. And some people are like, oh, I've never heard Monte before. Oh, I don't know Monte that well. This is cool. I got to learn more about him. There are other people who are like, okay, that was like an hour of him like dodging. And it was like, okay, because Monte's really good at that. And I don't blame him for being really good at that. And he's new to what he's doing, the position where he's out in front of things. And so he doesn't like to reveal a lot. But there are little things that happen during a podcast, the Marvin Bagley thing. And then Monte off the cuff mentioned that Vivek likes a jazz band leader. And when they fired Michael Malone, I was at Arco like the next day for a game, and I ended up getting Vivek for a one-on-one sit down, like in his really strange little lounge, which was like all like white leather seats, and it was like all like mood lighting. It was very strange. And for people like who are in the media world, they decided to take our old media room at Arco and convert it into like our dining room, convert it into like a club for the owners, because there wasn't an owners club at Arco when Vivek bought the team. So Vivek had them like build out this section of new media section, which was spectacular. It ended up being like a dining / work room that was spectacular. But hiding behind the old like cafeteria area at Golden One, where we all would go in and get dinner every night, there was a workroom. And so that workroom, they basically walled in, cut a hole on the side of it, and that's where Vivek's private lounge was. Anyway, to make this long story, which I'm drawing this out yet again. But to make it short,
you really set the scene though with you and Vivek in the mood lighting with the white leather.
I was like,
yeah.
Wait, Vivek.
So I get led into this room.
Kenny's about to redecorate his house now.
Yeah, it was pretty swanky. It was pretty cool. It's not my style, but I had it was at least 15 or 20 minutes. And what came out of that was like so stunning to me that I had no choice but to run it as a Q&A. Like I set it up because they had just fired Malone, I think the day before. But then when I rolled into what the conversation was, I like transcribed the entire thing because I don't think there's any other way to do it justice. And it went straight to ESPN. Like at that point, I worked for ESPN True Hoop, and I hit my bosses up and I said, I've got this, and they're like, okay, we'll take that. And I sent it, and it was probably, I don't know, 1,500 words. But in that, he specifically says he fired Malone because he didn't want a Souza Band leader. He wanted a jazz band leader. And that is, what is it, 2000? I mean, all the years running together.
Can I read you the quote directly?
Yeah, go for it.
I like to use a music metaphor. We had a Sassoon marching band, which was needed when there was chaos. But now we need to shift to a jazz band where people can be individually showcased and improvised. What we need is a jazz director. I think that's the kind of leadership moving forward. That's the direct quote.
So,
and you laid all of the stuff about chaos was all laid out before that quote.
All of it laid out before, right? So that is the quote. And what year is that piece?
2014.
2014. Yeah. So fast forward 7 years, when I hear that used again from a new general manager, I hear that jazz band quote used again when that literally was the darkest time in my, this is my 12th season. That stretch of games where they fire Malone, we go straight to Ty Corbin, which was unfortunately for Ty, it was not his fault. That is where the quote from Rudy Gay, where he calls Sacramento basketball hell, all of it comes, and then George Karl, all of that time frame, anything from that era, you can't use it again. And and when I hear a general manager mention that he wants that jazz band leader, it teed me off. And like, so I was pretty honest about it on the podcast.
You let Amick have it.
I didn't let Amick have it. Well, I mean, like, I set it up like I have here, but that's part of like the conversation where it's like, look, it's no hold bar now. I mean, like, look, I just don't understand how you can use that again. And like, I told my wife about this too. I was actually in a marching band when I was young, and we were really, really good. I went to Lyman Gilmore in Grass Valley, California. We won the Macy's Christmas Parade. We actually won the Presidential Award, where we beat all the college bands. And we were really, really good. The Woodland Christmas Parade, all of the parades we did. There is nothing wrong with having a band leader as your guy. Those teams win. If you want to go, we're going to see the Kings go up against the San Antonio Spurs. If you think that Greg Popovich isn't a Souza Band leader, that every single thing they do is practiced and practice and practice, and everything is like clockwork. The Utah Jazz destroy you because they are clockwork. So there is something to being free form and having freestyle and all that stuff that you get from a jazz band, which I was also in a jazz band, but there's something to like respect what you're seeing around the league. Like you're 15 years without a playoff appearance. And of that 15 years, we're talking we're 8 years into Vivek. Like that's on you. Like those 8 years, that's on you. And so like, I just would hope that they would learn that may have been what set me off more than anything else. Just like, it cannot be the same thing. We cannot be dealing with the same things behind the scenes. So there you go.
Guys,
tremendous.
Fabulous. You guys remind me, write it down, Damian. Luke Walton. I want to ask him something about Luke Walton. But you talked about what do they call it? A Souza Band?
Yeah.
Souza Band and a jazz band. I was in neither band. So I don't know that much about it, but just hearing the two, it feels like if you want a jazz band, you need top talent all around, and let the top talent do what the top talent does. If you don't have that top talent, you probably want a marching band, because you need everybody to be locked in unison to compensate for what you don't have with a sax player or, you know, somebody that plays whatever instrument is in a jazz band. And it's interesting. I'm hearing all that. Maybe they're trying to acquire this top talent, but they don't have the top talent right now to be in a jazz band. They probably need a marching band right now.
Yeah. And I'll say this. I love jazz. Number one, I totally dig jazz. But like, if you're in a marching band, like, you have your guy out in front that's spinning around the baton and flipping it up, and then you have a whole group of rifle people, like, that are spinning around wooden rifles, and then you have you know, your flutes and your clarinets and your saxophones and your trumpets and your baritones and your drum section. Each of those have a first chair, a second chair, a third chair. Each of those people are really good at what they do, but the key is that it only works if an entire group of people are in lockstep, that they all believe in the same things, that they're supporting each other, that someone who walks around with cymbals, who gets to clang his cymbals one time in an entire song, but he's ready for that one moment. That's what you're talking about. That's why
That was
look at
Chimezi
this.
Metu under the basket against Phoenix. That was his chance to clang the cymbals.
It was his chance to claim the cymbals. And I'll tell you, just because the comments are here, I played the trumpet for years, and then I also switched over, I think when I was in 8th grade, and played the baritone, which is, I did not play the tuba. The tuba is way too big for me at that point. I was like less than 5 foot tall, and I did not weigh 100 pounds in 8th grade. So a tuba would have, like, I would not have made it wearing a full uniform with a gigantic cap with a tassel out the top and everything else. But yeah, like, that's just like, it gives me almost like anxiety that that's something that's still talked about, that, you know, and that was my point to the whole thing. Like, I get it. You can like all kinds of music, and there's all kinds of good stuff out there, but like, this is basketball. Like, get the right people, put them in place, get out of the way, let them do their jobs. Either you fail or you succeed, and then you move on to the next group if they fail.
Go subscribe to the Kings Beat podcast wherever you get podcasts from, KC.
There's also, I want to go off. There's a lot going on right here. I love this. There's a lot going on right here. I want to get back to Monte McNair too, but you mentioned,
write it down.
There, thank you. That's my man.
Monte McNair.
You mentioned Luke Walton, and you mentioned what was it? Oh, coaching decision. And in that interview, said it was a coaching decision. I had a little bit of a trigger there, where it goes back to Nemanja Bjelica and how Luke had to wear that one. And I'm trying to find a better analogy right now. And I want to see if you feel like this is what's going on with it. It sure does feel like Luke is standing in front and taking a lot of bullets right now for things that may not even be so, like, it's coming off as solely his decision. Marvin Bagley, that's a coaching decision. Nemanja Bjelica, before we found out what happened, it was, Luke, why aren't you playing Bjelica? Why aren't you And Luke just said, you know, it's a personal, he's going through something personal. He didn't ever say he quit and said he refused to play. He had to wear it and say, well, Luke's an idiot for not playing Bjelica. He's got a guy like Bjelica there not playing him. It feels like Luke is taking a lot of bullets right now. Is that right or wrong?
I mean, this season specifically, I don't feel that so much. I think that with me, I just circled the Marvin Bagley situation and I put it to the side. And like, people ask me about it on Twitter all the time. I got emails about it this week. It's just, to me, like, there's no reason to update it. It is what it is. I mean, like, the story's told, the story's written. Like, if you want to know, go to the Kings Beat, and it's the first article I wrote. You can read the Marvin Bagley situation. Nothing has changed at all. So you got 16 guys who all want to be in Sacramento, and one guy who demanded a trade. And like, this group is moving together as a group together. They want to be here. They want to play together. They want to win. They want to make the playoffs. Buddy Hield has bought in. All these guys have bought in. That's it. That's the end of the day. And, you know, when it comes to the Bjelica situation, I'll even tell you that I don't even know if it's a Bjelica situation, because there was someone else Bielitsa got put on ice because the Kings were going to let Marvin Bagley either, sink or swim. That's why he got put on ice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to me, this situation, it's more like Jabari Parker. It's just like, hey, you're under contract. Like, we're not going to play you. It is what it is. Like, they do not believe that Marvin fits what they're doing right now and that he can help them win games. And it's not that Marvin's a horrible player. And I think that Marvin can have a great career. And I think Marvin can go somewhere else and find success. He can't find success in this style of offense. And with this team, there's too much baggage. So yes, Luke is taking some of the heat on that, but I mean, I'll just tell you, I covered the Sacramento Kings through 2 full-blown relocation attempts, and they left Paul Westphal hanging in the wind, where Jeff Petrie vanished. The Maloof brothers did a disappearing act, and they left their head coach standing in front of it every single night, fielding questions about something he had nothing to do with and knew nothing about, and a city that he was working in there, but another city that he had coached and played in and loved in Seattle. It was about as hard as possible. So as far as coaches having to sit there and own something, this is like child's play. It is. I mean, a coach having to stand there after some of the things that happened during the DeMarcus Cousins era, or the Rondo era. This franchise has had a tough time avoiding these situations through historically. And so like what Luke is dealing with right now, to me, it's not that bad. And I would much rather be Luke Walton this year with at least a full roster than last year, where like, how do you walk into post game and like, well, what happened there? Well, I only have 6 players, and but you can't say that, like I don't have the depth to compete. Like, how do you say that without saying it? It is my starting shooting guard is playing for the Atlanta Hawks, so like that's where he was last year. I think in this situation, he's in a much better situation this year. And I think it works. Like, I think he's doing all right with it.
I agree.
Well, let's shift to the controversy of Buddy Hield. There's no controversy. I didn't know how to segue. I was trying to make it cute. We ended our last conversation Monday. None of us thought Buddy Hield was going to get the start. I think one of the things we said before you left us was this could be the day that Davion Mitchell gets his first start. He didn't. Obviously, Buddy did. And we saw 2 things there. And I remember you specifically, James, said, we were talking about the struggles of Terence Davis, and you said, Buddy sucks the air out of that second unit because he wants to get that shot. He wants to find that shot, and he has the green light to get that shot. And then we saw Buddy put in the starting lineup and Terence Davis have his best game of the season.
Yeah, I didn't tell you that. I mean, I think I've said that before, right? Like, I think it's very possible that Buddy's just kind of sucked the air out of the second unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you see Terence and he has this moment, and it's like once the first shot goes down and it's like Terence Davis hit his first 3. That's huge. And then boom, 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 boom. I mean, he had 11 points like in the first quarter. And then when things spun out, I mean, he wasn't able to come in and replicate what he was doing early on, but he was also, then he ended up rolling his ankle and all that stuff. I just think it's hard, like that. We're early in the season. You got a lot of scoring options, a lot of guys who that's where they've made their name for themselves. And then you're asking them to like acquiesce to this team concept that you hope works out. And then for them, I would just point to Friday night and say, okay, if everyone wants to shoot, everyone wants to score, everyone wants to have a good time, let's just do what we did on Friday. Let's just roll up some team. And that like the crazy thing is they absolutely like got it going against Charlotte, and their pace went down. Like, how do you score 140 points in a game and have your pace go down? It's just crazy. It's because you were efficient, and that's what this
55%.
Yeah, they've got to figure out how to be efficient.
Yeah. Luke Walton with the dealing with the injuries to Tyrese Halliburton and now Terence Davis. I thought going into that game on Monday that they should go with anybody but Buddy Hield, and that's not a knock on him. It was he seemed to find the comfort level coming off the bench, really starting to embrace it and everything. I didn't want to mess that up. I don't want to get him, any false hope that, oh man, maybe if I play well and somebody goes down, I can get back to being a starter. No, buddy, you're not going to be a starter. You're going to be a sixth man. We want you to excel at that. And I would have started either Terence or Davion Mitchell. Is there any indication that after that game on Monday, maybe he's like, maybe we can get better production out of Buddy coming off the bench, and tonight and moving forward, if Tyrese can't go, that they will go with maybe Davion in that starting lineup?
I think Luke is looking at comfort levels, and instantly that the comfort level with Fox and Hield is there. They've played together a lot over the last 4 seasons. And so I think that's why he did what he did. And I also, in the back of my head, they tried the Terence Davis thing one other time and it didn't help. And he got deeper in his funk.
Mhm.
And so I think, well, Buddy knows how to fit in. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to get Terence going. And so let's go ahead and do it. I think it does. You always worry about the quarterback controversy, right? That's what we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah.
Are we going to have people second guessing whether Tyree should come off the bench or Buddy should come off the bench? Who should start, who shouldn't? So there is going to be a little bit of that. But if I would also say you look at, it's not usually just one game. It's I would rather have a seasoned pro that knows what he's doing going up against Devin Booker than run Davion out there and hope that he can hang with Devin Booker. And actually, Buddy did a good job, and the Kings did a good job on both Booker and Chris Paul, which I don't know if you guys caught that, but Chris Paul did every unnatural move in the book and got all the foul calls.
Oh.
That was so frustrating to watch. He did the loop up and under and grab twice on Davion. I don't get why the league does what they do, where sometimes it's called fair, and then you're looking at Damian Lillard, who's down 5 free throw attempts on the season per game. So yeah, again, I think Luke probably looked at Monday's game and said, okay, I got Booker here. And then he looked at Wednesday's game and said, okay, if Halliburton can't go on Wednesday, I'm probably going to roll with the same. I'm going to come back with Buddy again, just because you're looking at bigger, stronger shooting guards in San Antonio as well. So I think there's a little bit of that goes into it, and even OKC, okay, who's going to defend Shea? How am I going to do this? So you're looking out a couple of games saying, let's get some continuity. Let's try something. Let's get a guy who's really struggling some more minutes, but off the bench, not in a pressure situation where he's not going to have to fit into the starting lineup. He's going to be able to come in and do what Buddy does and just chuck away. And I think that's how you they snap Terence Davis out of his slump.
James, you mentioned a few moments ago, you don't really put any stock into that fourth quarter. The game was over midway through the third, which also coincidentally is when I think the Kings scored their first point of the second half, was somewhere around midway through the third. Mm-hmm. But what do you think Luke Walton's mentality was entering that fourth quarter? We saw Damian Jones and Chimezie Metu come in, and then we saw DeAaron Fox come back in with about 8 and some change left or so. Do you think the mentality was that let's make a run for 3, 4, 5 minutes, see what we could do? If we can't do anything, I'll get you guys out of there?
Yeah, it was, can we get it down to 10? That Luke said it in post game. He said, can we get it down to 10? And DeAaron said, can we get it down to 12? That was their mentality.
I remember DeAaron said that, and they did. The next time out, they were down to 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was what it was. It was can we do something here? Can we make a little run that leads us to believe that we could do a bigger run, that we could reel these guys in? I think the other thing was, can we make them put their starters back in? Because if we do that, then we're on to something, because that's a good thing. So now you're taking a bunch of guys who have been sitting around for 10, 12, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes with timeouts and quarter breaks and all that stuff.
They thought their night was over.
They're mentally out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's,
on the bench, they were kicking back. They thought the night was over.
Yeah, and that's what you were trying to do there. I mean, he brought DeAaron in with Jemias, and Jemiah's got like a minute and a half because it was like, oh, maybe we are onto something. And so he went back to what they were trying to, what was working. And I like Chimezie Metu and Damian Jones. We got to see so much of them down the stretch last year. I'll just say this team is so much deeper than it was last year. And these guys haven't even got to play. They're not bad NBA players. I mean, they can be on a bench for almost any team. I think they might not be, guys who get in the game for any team, but I still think that they're like, these are competent players that have been working their butts off all summer, and you got to get them some burn here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I'm looking at right now with the Sacramento Kings, and I mentioned it earlier to Damian, and I want to see if maybe you can gauge where the players are, where Luke is with this. The sense of urgency, like now, right, to take advantage of a road trip that, once again, like you said, no disrespect, it's on the road, they're NBA players or whatever the case may be, but you don't always get road trips like this. Typically, you got like a San Antonio, Dallas, Oklahoma City when they were good or whatever. You don't usually get a quick little 4-gamer. That's a few days, but 4-gamer against teams with a record like this. Is there a sense of urgency? I know it's one game at a time, but to take advantage of this and to really, all right, we got out of that rough spot to start the season, essentially a 500. Now's where we make our move in the early part of the season to establish that, hey, we're going to be here all year. Is it, or are they just kind of just the next game or something like that? How do you think?
No, they see this. They see this as their opportunity. And if they don't, then I don't know what to say. Like, to me, this is it. This is your chance to come back. Like, what is it? 4 games. So they would be 8-7 if they went 3-1. Or, you can come back 9-6. This is your chance because the schedule gets way tougher when you come home. And they have this really weird schedule where they have like so many home games. And then like I think it's 11 out of 12 or 12 out of 13 where they play in the state of California, and almost all of them are at home, but they're like one off to Golden State, or one off to LA. I mean, so they have an opportunity, but the schedule is tough. You got like Clippers twice, Lakers twice. You're going to get Memphis. You're going to it's not going to be like a cakewalk. So this is one of those segments where you've already lost 2 in a row. Last season, you lost 9 in a row twice. So you don't even want to hit that 3-game mark. Like, let's not go there. Let's end it now. Let's start something positive. Let's take it one day at a time. But one day at a time, where we're playing, a bunch of 3-win teams, and I think one 1-win team. This is a moment where if you don't take advantage of this 4-game stretch, then you've made a huge error.
And James, real quick, David, James, I know what you talked about maybe about a week and a half ago about, getting these upset games, right? Getting the Pelicans beating the Lakers or something like that. Yeah, get the Lakers with losses maybe you didn't expect. I'm off that. Okay. I want these bottom 5 teams to just sink to the bottom now, because the way things are right now, like you're in the play-in. And I think this is essentially these 10 teams in the standings. It's essentially what it should be. And you got an opportunity. I know it's just one game, but put another loss on OKC, put another loss on Minnesota, put a loss on San Antonio. And I'm ready for those bottom 5 teams in the West to start sinking right now. They need to lose as much as possible. You can help that out.
I get you. I think the Kings need to beat them. One of their losses need to be the Kings. Especially, I think put away the Pelicans now. Like, what are they, 1-10, something like that? 1-9. You put them away now, then you don't have to worry about what happens when Zion and Brandon Ingram and
who's out again tonight, by the way.
Yeah, when they get healthy, you don't have to worry about that anymore. So you just run these guys over right now. And the same thing, like San Antonio, this is the one that's always so hard, because if you lose tonight, then the doubt creeps in. How many times I would, if I'm this Kings team, I remember what happened game 1 of the bubble when you walked in and you overlooked San Antonio and you got absolutely destroyed and it crushed everything. This is a game where if you don't come in ready to play and ready to handle somebody, then that's on you. You know, this is not a great team. It's not a veteran team. They don't have Jakob Portal, and this is not a great team that you should fear.
James, you got to go.
I
You got to go talk to Luke Walton and get ready for the game here today. And we'll see you back here Friday.
Yep.